Here's your news for August 1st, 2020. And your headlines for today include WWE Summerslam 2020 location and PayBack pay-per-view date revealed. Why Kevin Owens hasn't been on WWE Raw since Extreme Rules. One more WWE wrestler opens up about his absence since pandemic. Major spoiler for next week's episode of AEW Dynamite. A huge name is set to debut. Is AEW adding a third hour to AEW Dynamite? How long is Matt Cardona staying in AEW? Two fired wrestlers take jab at Vince McMahon. Two megastars are coming face-to-face for an upcoming event. Nia Jax refusing to comment on WWE fine until she speaks with Vince McMahon. WWE extends date to possibly bring back furloughed producers, Vince blames Saudi, and more. We're kicking off today with news from SummerSlam, as fans still don't know where the August pay-per-view will take place. When WWE confirmed that the biggest party of the summer wasn't going to take place at Boston's TD Garden, the company surprisingly didn't mention where it'd be instead, though many fans are expecting it to take place at the Performance Center. It certainly makes sense for fans to think this, as every WWE pay-per-view since WrestleMania has happened at the Performance Center. And according to a report by PW Insider, this is the plan. They said, as of today, SummerSlam is still scheduled to take place at the WWE Performance Center, although WWE has been looking at other options. WWE typically would have no shortage of options, though the ongoing global situation is limiting what they can do. And whilst reports have circulated of SummerSlam taking place on a beach or even a boat, it seems that the biggest party of the summer will become the next big event the company's Performance Center will play host to. Speaking of pay-per-views, we've got news from PayBack, as the WWE is reportedly bringing back the pay-per-view just 1 week after SummerSlam. As first reported by PW Insider and later confirmed by Dave Meltzer, WWE's internal calendar has PayBack set to take place on August 30th at the Performance Center, though it's unclear why the show has been revived or why the event is happening so close to SummerSlam. WWE has not publicly announced the return of PayBack, which took place each year from 2013 to 2017, but expect that confirmation to come from the company in the next few weeks. Now, if you've watched this week's Raw, you may have noticed that Kevin Owens wasn't around despite his victory over Murphy on the Extreme Rules pre-show. According to Wrestling Observer, Owens' disappearance wasn't down to an injury. As they explained, Owens was at the Raw taping on 7/20. He had been written into the original shows, but with all the changes made, they decided not to use him. I think the key was that since they wanted to do injury angles with Black on both shows, the feeling was that Owens would theoretically have to do run-ins to attempt to break those up. Though the former Universal Champion hasn't appeared on the last two Raws, there's a possibility he'll return soon, especially as we approach SummerSlam. There's been a report that a WrestleMania rematch between Owens and Seth Rollins is being considered for the biggest party of the summer, and whilst this is just one of many possible matches for the Monday Night Messiah, hopefully Owens will be back on TV very soon. Another person fans haven't seen in quite some time is Riddick Moss, who hasn't appeared since losing the 24/7 championship on April 4th. With it now being nearly 4 months without Moss on TV, many have been wondering what his situation is, and Dave Meltzer said the company hasn't given up on him. In an appearance on the Spark in the Dark podcast, Moss confirmed that he's been absent from TV because of his brother's cystic fibrosis, which means he has a compromised immune system. Though the former 24/7 champion admitted he may have overreacted, he also spoke about having to be extra cautious in the current situation due to his brother's condition, and that he felt the need to protect his family member. It should be noted that Moss did recently return to the ring as he defeated Humberto Carrillo on an episode of Main Event, and hopefully it won't be too long before he returns to the Red brand. We've got some news from AEW next, as whilst fans have enjoyed their weekly 2 hours of Dynamite, the show could be adding a third hour to its programming. Speaking to ESPN, reigning TNT champion Cody Rhodes was asked about a possible third hour and said that it's something the company have been looking into, but doesn't have a firm answer at the moment. He added, "The goal of what the third hour would be is to showcase a different crop of talent from AEW. It's very hard when you have this much talent and you only have a single weekly show. It's hard to keep people in the mix. As a wrestler, it's even hard to train for. Cody added that a third hour would also allow fans to see more wrestlers from AEW, as well as wrestlers who aren't contracted to the company. Whilst Rhodes has clearly been mulling over a third hour of Dynamite, he later went on Twitter to deny that the show would be adding a third hour, and whilst that may not be happening now, it's clearly a possibility down the line for the growing company. We're sticking with AEW next, and next week's show will see a special guest moderator for the debate between Orange Cassidy and Chris Jericho, which has seemingly been revealed. With next week's show being taped this week, there are some who already know the results, and according to Reddit user SpaceForce1, who also spoiled the results for Fyter Fest's second night, the moderator will be a familiar face in wrestling, and if you don't want to be spoiled, please skip the next 30 seconds. According to SpaceForce1, Eric Bischoff will be the man to moderate the debate, and this comes just a few weeks after Tony Khan praised Bischoff, saying that Dynamite on TNT wouldn't have been a reality without WCW opening the door for them 20 years ago. It's unclear whether this is a one-off appearance by Bischoff or the start of something bigger, but we're sure that the man who thrives on controversy will add a certain X factor to this Wednesday's debate. Back to WWE next, and it wasn't too long ago that a hair versus hair match between Mandy Rose and Sonya Deville was pitched backstage. Though it was reported that the idea was dropped, it looks like fans may see some hair fly soon, as on this week's SmackDown, there was a follicle frenzy between the two former friends. Attacking Rose backstage, Sonya said she wanted to make the Golden Goddess as ugly on the outside as she is on the inside, and used scissors and hair clippers to rip out some hair. The former MMA fighter continued her path of rage on Twitter, asking fans what else does Rose have to offer, after Deville's beat her twice and ripped some of her hair out. Though Sonya didn't get the chance to cut off all of the Golden Goddess's hair, this opportunity may come at SummerSlam, though she also may be the one leaving with a new do. Back to All Elite Wrestling, as Matt Cardona recently debuted for the company, and though he'll compete on this Wednesday's show, fans shouldn't expect the broski to be around for long. According to Wrestling Inc., the former Zack Ryder is working under a deal that covers 5 appearances, with his first one already used up and his second set to be used next week. Cardona's history with AEW, especially Cody Rhodes, is well known, as it was Cody and Brandi who convinced Matt to ask out his now fiancée, WWE superstar Chelsea Green. Following Cardona's release from WWE in April after over a decade with the company, the TNT champion was quick to say that the former US champion will get over with fans again after his release, and whilst he may only be set for 5 appearances right now, it's clearly a possibility that AEW could sign the former WWE superstar to a much longer deal. Cardona's longtime tag partner Brian Myers is also doing some big things, as he recently returned to Impact Wrestling, and this week, the pair took a shot at Vince McMahon. On the Instagram for their Major Wrestling Figure podcast, the pair shared an image of themselves in figure form, with Cardona in the ring with Cody Rhodes, symbolizing his move to AEW, while Myers is with former TNA president Dixie Carter due to his move to Impact. Outside the ring, a dejected Vince McMahon can be spotted, as he seems to be regretting releasing the two back in April, and whilst we're not sure if the real Vince feels the same way, it's clear that the former Raw Tag Team Champions are doing pretty well for themselves outside of WWE. We're going back in time to 1997 now, as fans will remember Bret Hart and Steve Austin's legendary feud, and now they'll have the chance to live it all over again. As indicated by sources, both the Hitman and the Texas Rattlesnake will be part of Qatar Pro Wrestling's Summerslam 3, which is set to happen in March 2021, and will come face-to-face to discuss their historic rivalry. This is a truly once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for fans of the Middle East, and while Austin and Hart have discussed their iconic feud before, they've never done it in such a unique setting. We've got some sad news to report now, as English wrestling legend and former WWF Junior Heavyweight Champion Mark Rollerball Rocco has died aged 69. The son of wrestler Jim Husey, Rocco was a regular on ITV's World of Sport and saw him feud with the stars of the time, including Marty Jones and the Dynamite Kid. Overseas, Rocco had success in promotions like New Japan, where he became the first Black Tiger before his retirement came in 1991 after he lost consciousness in a match with Fit Finlay, which led him to discover a previously undiagnosed heart condition. several stars of NXT UK have paid their condolences to Rocco, with Sam Gradwell describing him as an innovator light years ahead of his time, which Flash Morgan Webster said he was one of the very best to lace a pair of boots. Clearly, Rollerball Rocco meant a lot to a lot of people, and we here at Slat Rock would like to offer our deepest condolences to Rocco's friends, family, and fans at this sad time. Over to Raw now, and after Nia Jax roughed up an official, she was fined an undisclosed amount and isn't happy about it. On Instagram, the former Raw Women's Champion said that on the advice of her counsel, she's not going to speak publicly about the fine or her meeting with Vince McMahon. That wasn't the only post Jax put out, as she also shared a photo of herself giving the double fingers, telling fans to find this. Whilst Jax doesn't seem too worried about her fine, she did recently delete her Twitter account, and whilst that might not be connected to this storyline, we can't help but wonder what caused the irresistible force to make that decision. Speaking of the Red brand, recently plans were dropped for a revived Nation of Domination, and that's completely fine with MVP. While appearing on Say Less with Kaz and Low Key, MVP discussed the rumored Nation and the reports that the ongoing social climate in the US led to it being dropped. He said, "We're not trying to make a statement on race. We're trying to just make a statement. I love the fact that there are young men of color that can watch us and go, oh, I want to be like them, because when I was a kid, I used to want to be like Rocky Johnson and Tony Atlas." The self-professed United States champion also spoke about wanting to work with Ricochet, and how he's spoken to the High Flyer about working together, so don't be too surprised if the former US champion becomes the next member of the Hurt Business. We are looking back at WWE's April releases, as over half a dozen producers were cut, but there were hopes that those producers would be back. Although there were hopes for the producers to be brought back in July, that obviously didn't happen, and now the Wrestling Observer newsletter is reporting that their furloughs have been extended to August 28th. Their report also said that many producers are now looking for other jobs to make ends meet in this unprecedented time, which is interesting considering the incredibly strong figures WWE had in their 2020 second quarter financial report. There had been hopes that furloughed producers would be brought back when WWE does non-televised events again, and whilst WWE has been speaking to arenas, it's still anybody's guess when that'll happen. Over to Saudi Arabia now, as the WWE's 10-year deal continues, but given the current situation, it looks like WWE won't be back for quite some time. During an investors call, Vince McMahon was asked about the company returning for another show this year and replied, "The decision has not been made yet, but based on where they are in their economy, I would doubt it." Given the fact that there are over 2 million active cases in the US compared to just over 40,000 in Saudi Arabia, it'd be no surprise if the company doesn't want a plane full of Americans touching down right now. It's been reported that any dates missed by WWE can be tacked on to the end of their deal, so whilst it seems like WWE will be having an 11th year as part of their deal, time will tell when the company can return to the Middle Eastern nation. And we're ending with news from NXT, as the WWE are looking to refresh the writing team. According to PW Insider, the company recently hired a few writers specifically for the Gold brand, and whilst WWE say they're not in competition with AEW Dynamite, it's hard to ignore the TNT show's consistent success over NXT. With new writers, some new ideas might come to the NXT table soon enough, and with Vince McMahon recently saying that WWE is looking to add new characters and exciting storylines, there could be some big changes ahead for the Gold brand. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so that you don't miss out on any updates we post on our channel. Please also check out our Top 10 video, Top 10 WWE Wrestlers Who Almost Died as a Result of a Wrestling Injury.